Before I met Jennifer, my life was relatively straightforward. I grew up in a small middle-class town in Ohio, raised by parents who believed in hard work and self-reliance. My dad was a plumber, and my mom worked at a local diner. They taught me the importance of solving problems on my own and making the best out of every situation. Inspired by their dedication, I decided to pursue a career in computer science, a field I felt passionate about from a young age. I moved to Boston to attend Northeastern University, one of the top tech schools in the country. College life was demanding but rewarding. I threw myself into my studies, working part-time as a teaching assistant to help cover tuition. My social life was practically non-existent, but I didn't mind. I had my eyes set on a future where I could build something impactful. It was during my junior year that I met Jennifer. We were both assigned to the same group project in a business ethics class. Jennifer was not someone you could easily overlook. She had an aura about her that drew people in. Standing at 5'7", with dark hair that cascaded in waves, and a smile that could light up a room, she had the kind of presence that made people pay attention. I, on the other hand, was just an average guy, blending into the background. I never thought someone like her would even notice me. Our group project was to analyze a well-known corporate scandal and present a case study. I had dreaded the idea of group work because, from past experience, it often meant doing the majority of the work alone. But when I met Jennifer, everything changed. She introduced herself with a confident handshake and a bright smile. "Hi, I'm Jennifer. Looks like we're in this together." Over the next few weeks, we met frequently to work on the project. Jennifer was incredibly smart and driven. She was studying to become a marketing executive and had big plans for her future. Her father was a successful businessman in New York, and she grew up watching him navigate the corporate world with ease. She wanted to follow in his footsteps, but in her own unique way. Her ambition was something I admired deeply. As we spent more time together, it became clear that there was chemistry between us. We would often stay late after our meetings, talking about everything from our childhoods to our dreams for the future. One evening, as we were wrapping up at a local coffee shop, she looked at me and said, I've never met someone who is so genuinely interested in learning new things. It's refreshing." I could feel my face flush. I stammered, "Well, I guess that makes two of us." We started dating soon after, and it didn't take long for us to realize we had something special. Jennifer was everything I had ever wanted in a partner: intelligent, caring, and supportive. We graduated together, and right after college, I landed a job as a software developer at a growing tech startup in Boston. Jennifer quickly found a position in marketing at a top firm in the city. It felt like everything was falling into place. The first few years of our relationship were perfect. We rented a small but cozy apartment in Cambridge and spent our weekends exploring the city, trying out new restaurants, and visiting art galleries. Jennifer loved art, especially abstract paintings, and would often drag me to exhibitions. At first, I went along just to make her happy, but over time, I started enjoying it as much as she did. We talked about getting married, buying a house, and starting a family. I was completely in love, and I believed she felt the same way. However, things started to change about 4 years into our relationship. Jennifer got a big promotion at work. She was now the head of the marketing department. It was a role she had been working towards for years, and I was thrilled for her. But with the new position came longer hours, more stress, and less time for us. I tried to be supportive, understanding that this was a crucial step in her career. I reassured her that I would be there for her no matter what. One evening, Jennifer came home later than usual. I had prepared dinner, a tradition we used to enjoy together at least once a week. She walked in, looking exhausted. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. She gave me a weak smile and nodded. "Yeah, just a lot going on. We have a big campaign coming up, and it's been nonstop." As we sat down to eat, I noticed she seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone. I couldn't help but feel a pang of worry. "Is everything okay?" I asked. She glanced up, almost startled by the question. "Yes, everything's fine," she said, but her tone didn't convince me. Over the next few months, things only got worse. Jennifer was constantly busy, always at the office or out at late-night meetings with clients. I tried to be patient, telling myself it was just a busy period that would eventually pass. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had become distant, almost like she was a different person. The little things we used to do together, cooking, watching movies, taking walks, had all but disappeared. It wasn't until a company holiday party that my suspicions began to solidify. Jennifer had invited me to join her at the event, and I was looking forward to finally spending some time with her and meeting her colleagues. When we arrived, she introduced me to her boss, Charles. He was a tall, well-dressed man in his late 40s, with a confident smile that seemed to linger a bit too long whenever he looked at Jennifer. I noticed how her demeanor changed around him. She seemed more animated, more engaged. It was subtle, but I could feel it. As the night went on, I tried to shake off the unease. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just overthinking things. But then I noticed Charles watching us from across the room. When Jennifer stepped away to grab a drink, he made his way over to me. "You're Jennifer's boyfriend, right?" he asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "She's quite the asset to our team. We're lucky to have her." There was something in the way he said it that made my skin crawl. I forced a smile and nodded, trying to keep my composure. Jennifer returned with our drinks, and Charles excused himself with a polite nod. I looked at her, searching for any sign that might explain the strange interaction, but she avoided my gaze. On the drive home, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Is there something going on between you and Charles?" I blurted out. Jennifer looked at me, shocked. "What? No. How could you even think that?" Her voice was filled with genuine surprise, but I wasn't convinced. "I don't know, Jen. It's just the way he looks at you, the way you act around him. It's different." She was quiet for a moment, then shook her head. "You're being ridiculous. He's my boss, nothing more." But her response didn't ease my concerns. I knew Jennifer well enough to sense when she was hiding something. From that night on, the seed of doubt was planted. I tried to ignore it, to trust her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. And deep down, I knew that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't even imagine. The unease I felt after that company party didn't subside. Instead, it grew stronger with each passing week. Jennifer's late nights at the office became even more frequent, and her mood at home fluctuated between distant and irritable. I tried to tell myself that it was just the stress of her new role, but a nagging voice in the back of my mind wouldn't let me rest. Something wasn't right, and I had to find out what it was. One Friday evening, Jennifer called me to say she'd be working late yet again. "It's a big pitch," she explained, her voice hurried. "Charles wants the whole team there to finalize everything before Monday." I tried to sound supportive, but the doubt was creeping into my voice. "All right," I said, "just don't work yourself too hard." She assured me she wouldn't, but I knew this routine all too well by now. I decided to take a drive to her office, just to see for myself. It felt like an invasion of privacy, but my gut told me I needed to know what was really going on. Her firm was located in a sleek high-rise in downtown Boston. When I arrived, I parked across the street and waited, watching the windows of her floor. It was nearly 9 p.m., and the building looked mostly empty except for a few lights still on. As I sat there, my mind raced. What if I was wrong? What if she really was just working late? But the thought of Charles' smug smile at the holiday party flashed in my mind, and I felt a surge of anger. I needed to be sure. After about an hour of waiting, I saw movement through the window. Two figures emerged from one of the conference rooms, Jennifer and Charles. My heart sank as I watched them laughing together. They were standing close, too close for just colleagues. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told me everything I needed to know. They stayed in the conference room for a while, talking and laughing like they were the only two people in the world. Then I saw something that made my stomach churn. Jennifer placed her hand on Charles' arm, and he covered her hand with his. It was a small, intimate gesture, but it spoke volumes. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. This was it, the confirmation I had been dreading. I left before they could see me. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Betrayal? Anger? Sadness. I drove aimlessly around the city for hours trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. By the time I returned home, it was past midnight, and Jennifer still wasn't back. I waited on the couch, replaying the scene in my head over and over again. When she finally came in, she looked surprised to see me awake. "You're up late," she said casually, kicking off her heels. Her tone was light, but I could see the tension in her eyes. "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Couldn't sleep." She walked over and kissed me on the forehead, her usual gesture, but it felt different now, almost like she was trying to cover something up. "I'm exhausted," she said. "I'm going to bed." I watched her walk up the stairs, and for the first time, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. The following day, I decided I needed more proof before confronting her. As much as it pained me, I wasn't ready to end our relationship based on a single observation. I had to be sure. So I started keeping track of her schedule, noting the days she worked late and the nights she came home acting strangely. I hated myself for doing it, but I couldn't just ignore what I had seen. A few weeks later, Jennifer mentioned that she had a work conference coming up in New York City. It was a weekend-long event, and she'd be leaving on Friday morning and returning Sunday night. I tried to act normal, nodding along as she told me about it, but I couldn't shake the suspicion that Charles would be there too. After she left for the conference, I decided to check her emails. I had never done anything like this before, but desperation drove me. I knew the password to her personal email. She had told me once when we were planning a trip together. My hands trembled as I typed it in, feeling like a complete intruder, but I needed to know the truth. What I found shattered my heart. There were dozens of emails between Jennifer and Charles, dating back months. At first, they were work-related, discussing projects and strategies, but as I scrolled further back, the tone changed. They started emailing each other after hours, joking about inside office gossip and sharing personal stories. Then came the flirtatious messages, full of compliments and teasing remarks. The most recent emails were downright explicit, detailing their plans for the weekend in New York. I closed the laptop and sat there in shock. My worst fears had been confirmed. This wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown affair. I felt like I had been living a lie, like the past year of my life had been ripped away from me in an instant. I didn't know what to do next. Confronting her seemed like the logical step, but the thought of it made me sick to my stomach. I needed time to process everything, so I decided to wait until she got back from the conference. I wanted to see her face when she walked through the door, pretending like everything was normal. The weekend dragged on like an eternity. I kept replaying the emails in my head, imagining them together in New York. My anger grew with each passing hour, but so did my resolve. I knew I couldn't let this go unaddressed. I had to confront her to make her face the consequences of her actions. When she returned on Sunday evening, she looked radiant, almost glowing. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, knowing the reason behind her happiness. She kissed me on the cheek and asked how my weekend was. I forced a smile, barely able to hold back my emotions. "It was fine," I lied. "Just did some work around the house." We sat down for dinner, and I could feel the tension hanging in the air. She seemed oblivious, chatting about her trip as if nothing had happened. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed my fork down, making her jump. "How was your weekend with Charles?" I asked, my voice cold and accusing. Her face went pale. "But what are you talking about?" she stammered. "It was a work trip, nothing more." I stood up, towering over her as I glared down. "Don't lie to me, Jennifer. I saw the emails. I know everything." Her eyes widened in shock, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she just stared at me, her face a mixture of fear and guilt. For a moment, the room was silent. Then she broke down, covering her face with her hands as she started to cry. "I'm sorry," she whispered through her sobs. "I never meant for this to happen." I felt a surge of anger like I had never felt before. "You didn't mean for it to happen," I shouted. "You made a choice, Jennifer. You chose him over me. You betrayed me, and now you want to say you're sorry." She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "Please, let me explain," she pleaded. "It wasn't serious. It was just, I don't know. I got caught up in the excitement. I never wanted to hurt you. Her words felt hollow, like a rehearsed script. I shook my head, feeling tears sting my eyes. It doesn't matter anymore, I said quietly. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. With that, I walked out of the room, leaving her there crying. I grabbed my coat and left the house, slamming the door behind me. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for certain. My relationship with Jennifer was over, and I was ready to make her and Charles pay for what they had done. The night I walked out on Jennifer felt like the longest night of my life. I drove around Boston aimlessly, my mind a chaotic mess of anger, betrayal, and sadness. It was hard to accept that the person I had loved and planned a future with had shattered our life together so effortlessly. After hours of driving, I pulled into a deserted parking lot near the Charles River, the city lights reflecting off the dark water. I sat there, staring at the rippling surface, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. I knew I couldn't just walk away without making them pay for what they had done to me. The anger inside me was too strong to let this go without consequences. But I also realized that if I was going to get my revenge, I had to be smart about it. I needed a plan. The emails were a good start, but I needed more concrete evidence if I was going to destroy both Jennifer and Charles. The thought of confronting them directly seemed too easy. I wanted them to feel the same pain and humiliation they had inflicted on me. The next day, I called out of work. I told my boss I was sick, but the truth was, I had a different kind of work to do. I spent the morning reviewing the emails I had found, taking screenshots of the most incriminating messages. I also started compiling a timeline of Jennifer's late nights and suspicious behavior, cross-referencing it with the dates of the emails. The more I dug, the deeper the betrayal felt. This affair had been going on for almost a year. I couldn't believe how blind I had been. I knew I needed help to gather more evidence, so I decided to hire a private investigator. I found a reputable agency online and set up a meeting with one of their detectives, a guy named Jack Thompson. He was a former cop who had been in the PI business for over a decade. I figured if anyone could get me the dirt I needed, it would be him. When I met Jack at his office later that afternoon, he greeted me with a firm handshake. He was a stocky man in his 50s with a grizzled beard and a no-nonsense attitude. We sat down, and I explained my situation, showing him the emails and detailing what I had witnessed at Jennifer's office. Jack listened quietly, taking notes as I spoke. When I finished, he looked at me with a sympathetic nod. "You've already got a pretty solid case here," he said. "But if you want to make sure this doesn't come back to bite you, we need more than just emails. We need photos, videos, something undeniable." I nodded in agreement. "That's what I was hoping you'd say. I want everything. I want proof that she can't deny." Jack assured me he'd get started right away. He asked for Jennifer's and Charles' schedules, as well as any details I could provide about their usual meeting spots. He also advised me to lay low and act normal around Jennifer until we had everything we needed. It was the hardest advice to take, but I knew he was right. If I confronted her too soon, she might cover her tracks, and I'd lose my chance to gather solid evidence. Over the next few weeks, I did my best to pretend everything was fine at home. Jennifer seemed relieved that I wasn't bringing up the affair again, probably assuming I had decided to forgive her. She was more affectionate, trying to make up for her guilt by cooking dinner and initiating conversations, but it all felt forced and hollow. I played along, pretending to be the forgiving boyfriend, while inside, I was boiling with rage. Meanwhile, Jack kept me updated on his progress. He had followed Jennifer on several of her late nights at the office, and it didn't take long for him to confirm my suspicions. He sent me photos of Jennifer and Charles leaving a fancy restaurant together, holding hands as they walked down the street. Another set of photos showed them entering a hotel downtown, laughing and smiling as if they didn't have a care in the world. The final nail in the coffin was a video of them kissing in the hotel lobby, clearly unconcerned about who might see them. I felt a sickening mix of satisfaction and heartbreak as I watched the video. I finally had the proof I needed, but it was painful to see the woman I loved with another man, so carefree and happy. It was a side of Jennifer I had never seen before, and it made me realize that the person I thought I knew no longer existed. With the evidence in hand, I started planning my next move. I knew that simply confronting Jennifer wouldn't be enough. I wanted to hit both her and Charles where it hurt the most, their careers and reputations. I spent the next few days researching the company where they both worked. It was a well-known marketing firm in Boston, and Charles was one of the top executives. If news of their affair got out, it would be a scandal big enough to ruin both of them. I decided to create an anonymous email account to send the evidence to the company's board of directors. I attached the photos and video Jack had taken, along with the incriminating emails I had found. I wrote a short, blunt message. To whom it may concern, I believe you should be aware that two of your employees, Charles Brennan and Jennifer White, have been engaged in an inappropriate relationship for nearly a year. Attached are photos, videos, and emails that prove their affair. I thought you would want to know, given the company's policy on workplace relationships and the potential impact this could have on your reputation. I hit send, feeling a rush of adrenaline. It was done. Now all I had to do was wait. The next few days were agonizing. Jennifer went about her usual routine, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. I watched her closely, waiting for the moment when she would realize what was happening. Finally, one morning she got a call at home. I could tell from the look on her face that it was serious. She answered with a nervous hello, and her expression quickly changed from confusion to shock. I heard her say, "Yes, I understand. I'll be there right away." She hung up and turned to me, looking pale. "I have to go to the office," she said, grabbing her coat. Something urgent came up. I nodded, pretending not to know what was going on. "All right, let me know if you need anything," I said, giving her a reassuring smile. She hesitated for a moment, as if she wanted to say something, but then just nodded and left. I waited a few minutes before following her. I parked across the street from her office building and watched as she hurried inside. I knew that the email had reached its mark. The fallout had begun. That evening, Jennifer came home looking like she had been through hell. Her makeup was smudged and her eyes were red from crying. She didn't say anything at first, just dropped her bag on the floor and collapsed onto the couch. I sat down across from her, keeping my face expressionless. "What happened?" I asked, feigning concern. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with fear and disbelief. "They found out," she whispered. "Someone sent them photos, videos, emails, everything." I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, but managed to keep my face neutral. "What do you mean, everything?" Jennifer broke down in tears. "They know about Charles and me. They called us both into a meeting today with the board. They suspended us pending an investigation. It's over. My career, everything I've worked for, it's all over." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms as I stared at her. "Well, I guess actions have consequences," I said coldly. Jennifer looked at me, a flash of anger crossing her face. "You did this, didn't you? You sent those emails." I didn't respond, just kept staring at her. The silence was answer enough. "How could you?" she shouted, her voice breaking. "I made a mistake, but you've destroyed everything." I stood up, my expression hard. "You destroyed our relationship the moment you decided to cheat on me with your boss. I just made sure you paid the price for it." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her sobbing on the couch. I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. It wasn't joy, exactly, but a feeling of closure. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my life again. And this was only the beginning of what I had planned. I wasn't finished yet. Charles was next, and I intended to bring his whole world crashing down. Jennifer's breakdown was just the beginning. I knew I couldn't stop there. Charles Brennan was the next target. His smug smile and the way he casually disregarded me as a non-threat during the holiday party replayed in my mind constantly. I wanted him to feel the full weight of the consequences for what he had done. This wasn't just about ruining his affair with Jennifer. I wanted to dismantle his entire professional reputation and personal life. After the anonymous email I sent to their company's board, I knew that both Charles and Jennifer had been suspended. I kept tabs on the situation from a distance, pretending to be a supportive boyfriend to Jennifer while secretly savoring every detail of their downfall. She was too distraught to realize I was the one behind the leak, which gave me the perfect opportunity to continue gathering information. I contacted Jack, the private investigator, to dig deeper into Charles' life. I wanted to know everything about him, his financials, his past, any skeletons in his closet. Jack agreed, understanding that this was about more than just an affair. It was about justice. A few days later, Jack called me with some interesting news. "I've got something you might find useful," he said. "I found a couple of irregularities in Charles' financial records. It seems like he's been embezzling money from his company's marketing budget. I'm not talking about a small amount either. This looks like it's been going on for years." The revelation hit me like a bolt of lightning. Charles wasn't just a sleazy boss cheating on his wife. He was a criminal. I knew I had struck gold. If I could expose this, it would destroy his career and possibly land him in prison. I instructed Jack to compile a detailed report with all the evidence he could find, including bank statements and transaction records that showed the money being funneled into a private account. As I waited for Jack's report, I began to notice changes in Jennifer. She was becoming more paranoid and withdrawn. Her career was hanging by a thread, and she was on the verge of a mental breakdown. She spent most of her time on the phone, trying to salvage whatever she could. I overheard fragments of her conversations with her lawyer and friends, desperately trying to explain herself. It was clear that she was losing everything she had worked so hard to build, and it was tearing her apart. One evening, while Jennifer was out meeting with her lawyer, I decided to pay Charles a visit. I knew where he lived, a penthouse apartment in a luxurious high-rise in the Back Bay area of Boston. I had no intention of being seen, so I parked a block away and walked over, making sure to blend in with the crowd. I took the elevator up to his floor and waited in the hallway, listening for any signs of movement inside his apartment. After about 15 minutes, I heard voices. It was Charles and a woman, not Jennifer. They were laughing, their voices muffled through the door. I felt a surge of anger, realizing he had moved on to another victim without a second thought. I knocked on the door, not entirely sure what I was going to say, but determined to confront him. Charles opened the door with a surprised expression, clearly not expecting visitors. "What the hell are you doing here?" he asked, his voice laced with irritation. I forced a smile, keeping my tone calm. "I thought we should have a chat, Charles, man to man." He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "Are you insane? Do you realize what you're doing? If Jennifer sees you here..." I cut him off. "I know everything, Charles. The affair, the embezzlement, it's all going to come crashing down on you." His face went pale, and he glanced around the hallway nervously. "You don't know what you're talking about," he spat, but I could see the fear in his eyes. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. "You think you're untouchable because of your position, but I have everything I need to ruin you. The photos, the emails, and now your little financial scheme. I've got it all, and I've already sent copies to your company's board of directors." He stared at me, his jaw clenched, clearly trying to figure out if I was bluffing. "You're bluffing," he finally said, his voice shaking slightly. "There's no way you could have gotten that information." I chuckled, enjoying the look of panic spreading across his face. "You'd be surprised what a determined man can do when he's been betrayed. But don't take my word for it. You'll find out soon enough." Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there in stunned silence. As I made my way back to the car, I felt a sense of satisfaction. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt like I had the upper hand. The next morning, I received a call from Jack. He had finished compiling the report on Charles' embezzlement. "I've sent the files to your email," he said. "This is enough to open a full-scale investigation. If you forward this to the right people, Charles is done." I thanked him and immediately opened my laptop. The report was thorough and damning. It detailed how Charles had siphoned off funds from various marketing projects, diverting them into a private offshore account. The amounts were staggering, far more than I had imagined. It was clear that he had been doing this for years, covering his tracks well enough to avoid detection, until now. I knew exactly who to send it to, the company's CFO, and the head of the legal department. I crafted a short, anonymous email attaching the report. To whom it may concern, attached is a comprehensive report detailing fraudulent activity conducted by Charles Brennan. The evidence speaks for itself. I suggest a thorough internal investigation before this becomes public knowledge. I clicked send, feeling a rush of adrenaline. Now, it was only a matter of time. A few days later, the news broke. The company announced that Charles Brennan had been terminated effective immediately and that an internal investigation was underway. The story quickly spread through industry circles, with rumors of embezzlement and fraud swirling around. Jennifer found out soon after, her face a mask of shock as she read the news on her phone. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They fired Charles?" I nodded, pretending to be as surprised as she was. "I heard about it this morning," I said. "There's talk of financial misconduct. It looks like he was stealing from the company." She stared at me, her eyes wide with fear. You don't think this has anything to do with us, do you?" I shrugged, feigning ignorance. "I don't know. But if they're investigating him, who knows what they'll find." Jennifer sank into the couch, burying her face in her hands. "This can't be happening," she muttered. "It can't end like this." But it did. Charles was quickly discredited in the industry, blacklisted from every major firm. Word spread fast about his unethical behavior, and no one wanted to be associated with him. Meanwhile, Jennifer's reputation was also in tatters. Her involvement in the affair was now an open secret, and she struggled to find work. She applied to several marketing firms, only to be rejected every time. Her once promising career was now a distant memory. I watched it all unfold with a cold sense of satisfaction. They had destroyed my life, and I had returned the favor tenfold. But there was one final piece to the puzzle: Jennifer. Our relationship was beyond repair, and it was time to end it for good. One evening I sat her down. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and desperation. "We can still fix this," she said quietly. "We can start over, move somewhere new." I shook my head. "No, Jennifer. There's no coming back from this. I've seen who you really are, and I can't unsee it." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Please," she whispered. "Don't leave me. I've lost everything else. Don't take this away too." I stood up, grabbing my packed bag. "You took everything from me first," I said. "I'm just returning the favor." With that, I walked out, leaving her alone in the apartment we once shared. I didn't look back. As I stepped into the cold night air, I felt a strange sense of peace. It was over. I had lost a lot, but I had gained something far more valuable: the knowledge that I had the strength to stand up for myself, to fight back when it mattered most. And as I walked away, I knew I was finally free. Leaving Jennifer felt like shedding a heavy, suffocating weight. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of freedom. I moved into a new apartment in the Seaport district, away from the memories of our shared life. It was a small studio, but it had a view of the harbor and felt like a fresh start. I knew I had a lot of healing to do, but I was ready to rebuild my life, one step at a time. The next few weeks were surprisingly calm. I threw myself into my work at the tech startup, taking on extra projects and staying late at the office. The distraction was welcome, giving me a sense of purpose and keeping my mind off everything that had happened. My colleagues noticed the change in me. I was more focused, more driven. I even got a raise and a promotion to lead developer, a recognition that I was proud of but hadn't expected. On weekends, I explored Boston like I never had before. I walked through the bustling streets of the North End, sampling cannoli from the famous Italian bakeries. I took long runs along the Charles River, letting the crisp autumn air clear my head. Slowly, the city that once felt tainted by memories of Jennifer became a place where I could find new experiences and new beginnings. Despite the progress I was making, there was still a lingering bitterness in me. I had succeeded in dismantling Jennifer's and Charles' lives, but I couldn't shake the sense of emptiness that came with it. The satisfaction I'd imagined didn't fill the void they had left behind. It was a strange feeling. The victory was mine, but it felt hollow. One afternoon, as I was settling into my new routine, I got an unexpected call from Jack, the private investigator. "Hey, thought you might be interested in hearing this," he said without preamble. "I've been keeping tabs on Charles like you asked. Things have taken a turn." Curious, I leaned back in my chair. "What do you mean?" "Well," Jack continued, "after he got fired, he tried to launch his own consulting business. But it flopped. He burned through his savings pretty quickly, and now he's under investigation by the IRS for tax evasion. Looks like your little expose did more damage than we thought." I couldn't help but smirk. "Karma's a bitch," I muttered. "That's not all," Jack added. "I also found out something about Jennifer. She's been trying to reach you, but when she couldn't get through, she started asking around at your old places. Sounds like she's desperate to talk to you." The thought of Jennifer hunting for me after everything that had happened felt surreal. "Did she say why?" "No," Jack replied, "but she seemed pretty frantic. My guess is she wants to make amends or try to explain herself. Do you want me to dig deeper?" I paused, considering it. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to cut her out of my life completely. But another part, the part that still felt hurt and betrayed, wanted answers. "No, it's fine," I finally said. "I don't need to hear anything from her. Let's just close that chapter." Jack agreed, and we hung up. I felt a strange sense of closure wash over me. Jennifer's desperation was proof that she was finally facing the consequences of her actions. It wasn't the kind of closure I had expected, but it was enough. A few days later, as I was wrapping up work at the office, I received an email notification. It was from an unknown address. The subject line read, "Asterisk, asterisk, we need to talk. It's about Charles." Asterisk, asterisk, my pulse quickened as I opened the email, half expecting it to be from Jennifer. Instead, it was from a woman named Lauren. Asterisk, hi Todd, asterisk. Asterisk, I'm not sure if you remember me, but we met briefly at a networking event a few years ago. I'm one of the partners at Charles Brennan's former company. I found out what happened between him, Jennifer, and you. I need to discuss something urgent with you regarding the fallout from the scandal. Please call me as soon as you can, asterisk. She left her phone number at the end of the email. I was stunned. I vaguely remembered Lauren from a company function Jennifer had dragged me to years ago, but we hadn't spoken since. Why was she contacting me now? I decided to call her right away. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Todd, thank you for calling. I know this must be a surprise." "You could say that," I replied cautiously. "What's this about?" Lauren took a deep breath. "I found out about what Charles did. The affair, the embezzlement, everything. It's turned into a major legal issue for our firm. We've been subpoenaed by the state for an investigation, and there's a lawsuit brewing from some of our biggest clients. It's a mess." I felt a grim satisfaction. That sounds like a problem for Charles, not me. "Yes, but here's the thing," Lauren continued. "Charles is trying to shift the blame onto Jennifer. He's claiming she was involved in the embezzlement scheme as well, saying she helped cover it up in exchange for promotions and financial kickbacks." My breath caught in my throat. Despite everything Jennifer had done, I never imagined she'd be implicated in something like this. "That's ridiculous," I said. "She had nothing to do with the financial side of things. She didn't even know about the embezzlement until after I exposed it." "That's what I figured," Lauren replied. "But Charles is desperate, and he's trying to drag as many people down with him as he can. I'm reaching out because we need your testimony. Your evidence was the catalyst for the investigation, and you know firsthand what happened between them. If you testify, it could discredit Charles' claims and clear Jennifer of any involvement." I was silent for a moment, grappling with a mix of emotions. On one hand, I had wanted nothing more than to destroy Charles and Jennifer for what they did to me. On the other hand, hearing that Jennifer was being dragged into legal battles for crimes she didn't commit felt like an unexpected twist of fate. "Why should I help her?" I finally asked. "After everything she put me through, why should I care if she gets caught up in this?" Lauren's voice softened. "Because she's already lost everything. Her job, her reputation, it's all gone. If you don't testify, she could end up facing charges for something she didn't do. I'm not asking you to forgive her, but at least consider helping her out of this mess. I hung up the phone without giving Lauren an answer. I couldn't believe the situation had escalated this far. Part of me felt vindicated, knowing that Charles was finally paying for his crimes, but another part of me felt a pang of guilt at the thought of Jennifer being unfairly blamed for something she hadn't done. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying Lauren's words in my head. It felt like a cruel twist of fate. After months of planning and executing my revenge, I was now faced with a choice I never anticipated. I could stay silent and let Jennifer suffer the consequences alongside Charles, or I could step in and clear her name, knowing it might be the right thing to do. As dawn broke, I finally made up my mind. I knew what I had to do, not for Jennifer's sake, but for my own. If I stayed silent and let her take the fall, I'd be no better than Charles. I had to stand up and do the right thing, even if it meant letting go of the last remnants of my anger. I called Lauren back that morning and agreed to testify. The relief in her voice was palpable. "Thank you, Todd. You're doing the right thing." And as I looked out at the rising sun over the harbor, I realized I was ready to finally move on with my life. The past was behind me, and for the first time in a long while, the future felt like a blank canvas waiting for me to paint a new story. The decision to testify against Charles and clear Jennifer's name wasn't easy, but it felt like a necessary step to truly move on. I couldn't keep holding on to the bitterness. It had consumed enough of my life already. In the days leading up to the court hearing, I felt a strange calm settle over me, as if by choosing to do the right thing, I had finally regained control over my own narrative. The hearing took place in a sleek courthouse in downtown Boston. The atmosphere was tense, the room filled with lawyers, company executives, and a handful of curious onlookers. I spotted Jennifer sitting near the front, her face pale and anxious. She hadn't noticed me yet, but I could see the fear in her eyes as she glanced around the room. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of sympathy for her. Despite everything, I could tell this was breaking her. Charles sat a few seats away, looking surprisingly composed. He was dressed impeccably in a dark suit, his expression smug, as if he believed he could talk his way out of this like he had done with so many other situations. I clenched my fists, reminding myself why I was there. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. When it was my turn to testify, I walked up to the stand and took a deep breath. The prosecutor asked me to recount the events leading up to my discovery of the affair and the subsequent financial misconduct. I explained everything, from the emails I had found to the private investigation that uncovered Charles' embezzlement scheme. As I spoke, I could feel Jennifer's eyes on me, but I avoided looking at her. I didn't want to see whatever emotion might be flickering in her gaze. Charles' attorney tried to discredit me, suggesting that I was a bitter ex-boyfriend with a vendetta, but the evidence was too damning to ignore. Jack's detailed report and the financial records I provided were airtight. The more Charles' attorney pressed, the clearer it became to everyone in the room that Charles was grasping at straws. Finally, the prosecutor asked me one last question. "Mr. Carter, to your knowledge, was Jennifer White aware of Charles Brennan's financial misconduct?" I took a moment to compose myself before answering. "No," I said firmly. "She had no knowledge of his embezzlement. She was involved in an affair, yes, but she was never a part of his fraudulent activities. Her involvement ended at the personal level, and she had no hand in any criminal actions." There was a murmur in the courtroom, and I could feel the tension dissipate slightly. The prosecutor gave me a nod of approval, and I stepped down from the stand, feeling an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. I had done what I came to do. As I left the courthouse, I heard a voice call my name. I turned to see Jennifer hurrying towards me. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. "Todd, wait," she called out, her voice cracking. I stopped but didn't speak. She caught up to me, standing there, searching my face for something. Maybe forgiveness, maybe understanding. "I don't know what to say," she began. "Thank you for what you did in there. You didn't have to, but you did, and I don't know how to make it right." I looked at her, taking in the sight of the woman I had once loved so deeply. She seemed smaller now, diminished somehow, as if the weight of her choices had finally caught up with her. "You can't make it right, Jennifer," I said quietly. We both made choices that led us here. I've let go of my anger, but that doesn't mean I can forget what happened. You need to move on, just like I do. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she nodded. I understand. I'm sorry, Todd. I really am. I gave her a small, sad smile. I know. Take care of yourself. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there on the courthouse steps. I didn't look back. This time, I knew it was truly over. In the weeks that followed, the legal case against Charles intensified. The evidence was overwhelming, and he quickly became the focus of a criminal investigation. He was eventually arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. The news made headlines in Boston's business circles, and his name was dragged through the mud. His fall from grace was swift and absolute. It was the kind of justice that couldn't be bought or manipulated. Jennifer, on the other hand, managed to avoid criminal charges thanks to my testimony. However, her career in marketing was effectively over. Her reputation had been tarnished beyond repair, and no reputable firm would touch her. I later heard through mutual acquaintances that she had left Boston, moving back to her hometown to start over. It felt like the right ending for her, a chance to rebuild away from the mess she had created. As for me, life took an unexpected turn. My involvement in the court case drew the attention of several business leaders who admired my courage and integrity. One day, I received a call from an old acquaintance, Nathan, who had been a mentor to me during my early years at the startup. He had recently launched his own tech consulting firm and was looking for a partner to help him grow the business. Todd, I've been following what happened, Nathan said. I know it was a tough situation, but you handled it with a lot of integrity. I could use someone like you on my team. What do you say? It felt like fate was offering me a new beginning. I agreed to join him, and within a few months, I found myself co-running a thriving consulting firm. We specialized in cybersecurity, helping companies prevent the kind of financial fraud that had brought down Charles. It was ironic in a way, but it felt like I had come full circle, using my experiences to help others avoid similar pitfalls. I threw myself into the work, finding solace in building something new, something positive. The pain of the past started to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. I made new friends, reconnected with old ones, and even started dating again. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was genuinely happy. One crisp fall morning, as I was walking through Boston Common, enjoying the changing leaves, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number, but I opened it out of curiosity. Asterisk, hey Todd, it's Lauren. I just wanted to let you know that the case against Charles has been closed. He took a plea deal and is serving time. I thought you'd want to hear the news. Hope you're doing well. Lauren asterisk. I smiled, a feeling of closure washing over me. I replied with a simple thank you and put my phone away. As I continued my walk, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The chapter was finally closed. I paused by the edge of the pond, watching a pair of swans glide across the water. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. The past was behind me, and the future was wide open. In that instant, I realized something important. Life goes on. People make mistakes, betrayals happen, but time has a way of healing wounds. I had lost a lot, but I had gained something far more valuable. A new beginning and a sense of self-worth that no one could ever take away from me. As I turned to leave, I felt a renewed sense of hope. It wasn't the ending I had envisioned when I set out on my path of revenge, but it was the one I needed. And for the first time in a long while, I was looking forward to whatever came next. The days following the closure of Charles' case felt surreal. The whirlwind of events that had turned my life upside down was finally over. There were no more battles to fight, no more plans of revenge to execute. The chapter was truly closed, and I was left with a quiet sense of relief. But along with the calm came a profound emptiness. I had spent so much time driven by anger and betrayal that I now found myself wondering what was next. I focused on my work with Nathan at the tech consulting firm. Business was booming, and we were making a name for ourselves in the cybersecurity space. We had clients ranging from small startups to major corporations, all seeking to safeguard their digital assets in an increasingly volatile world. I immersed myself in the challenge, enjoying the complexity of the problems we were solving. It felt good to be building something positive, something that could prevent others from experiencing the kind of financial deceit I had witnessed. Despite the success, there was still a part of me that felt unfulfilled. The truth was, I had been so focused on taking down Jennifer and Charles that I hadn't stopped to think about what I wanted for my own life. It was time to find out who I was beyond the betrayal and the revenge. One weekend, as I was organizing some old files in my apartment, I stumbled upon a box of memories from my college days. Photos, ticket stubs, mementos from road trips. At the bottom of the box was an old notebook filled with ideas I had jotted down years ago, back when I was a fresh-faced computer science major with dreams of creating my own tech startup. I hadn't thought about those dreams in a long time, not since getting caught up in the daily grind of my career and my relationship with Jennifer. I spent the rest of the day flipping through the notebook, reminiscing about the excitement and passion I had felt back then. It was like reconnecting with a younger version of myself, someone who hadn't yet been jaded by the disappointments of life. I realized I had put those dreams on hold, burying them under the weight of everything that had happened. But now, with the slate wiped clean, I felt a spark reignite. I started spending my free time brainstorming ideas, sketching out concepts for potential new projects. Nathan noticed the change in me and encouraged it. "You've got the talent and the drive, Todd," he said one day after a meeting. "If you've got an idea you want to run with, let's make it happen. I'm behind you all the way." Nathan's support was exactly what I needed. I decided to focus on a project I had been toying with for years, a platform that would provide small businesses with accessible, affordable cybersecurity solutions. It was something I believed in, a way to give back to the community by helping the little guys protect themselves in a world where digital threats were becoming increasingly sophisticated. As I dove into the project, I found myself filled with a new sense of purpose. The late nights spent coding and problem-solving didn't feel like a burden. They felt like a return to the passion I had lost somewhere along the way. It was exhilarating to be building something from the ground up again, this time with the experience and knowledge I had gained over the years. The months flew by, and before I knew it, we were ready to launch the platform. Nathan and I held a small launch event at a co-working space in Boston, inviting friends, clients, and a few potential investors. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People were genuinely excited about what we had created, and it felt like validation for all the hard work we had put in. After the event, as I was packing up, a familiar face approached me. It was Lauren, the partner from Charles' old firm who had reached out to me during the legal case. She smiled warmly and extended her hand. "Congratulations, Todd. This is impressive. I've been following your progress." "Lauren, it's great to see you," I said, shaking her hand. "I wasn't expecting you here." She shrugged with a playful grin. "I'm in town for a conference, and I thought I'd stop by. I'm glad I did. You've really built something special here." We spent a few minutes catching up, and I found myself genuinely enjoying her company. There was no awkwardness, no reminders of the past, just an easy, pleasant conversation. As the night wound down, she hesitated before speaking again. "You know, Todd," she began, "I've been thinking about expanding my own consulting practice, but I could use a partner with your skill set. What you've done here is incredible, and I'd love to collaborate on something bigger if you're interested." Her offer took me by surprise. I hadn't considered branching out beyond the project Nathan and I had built, but the idea of expanding into new areas was intriguing. "Let's grab coffee and talk about it," I suggested. "I'd love to hear more." Over the next few weeks, Lauren and I met several times to discuss potential collaboration. I was impressed by her vision and her strategic mind. It became clear that our skill sets complemented each other perfectly. We decided to team up, merging our expertise to create a new division focused on helping larger firms and high-profile clients navigate complex cybersecurity challenges. Working with Lauren brought a fresh perspective to my life. She was sharp, driven, and shared my passion for building something meaningful. As we spent more time together, a deeper connection began to form. It was unexpected, but I found myself looking forward to our meetings, enjoying the way our conversations flowed effortlessly from business to personal topics. One evening, after a particularly productive brainstorming session, we decided to take a walk along the waterfront. The city was lit up, the lights reflecting off the calm waters of the harbor. We talked about our dreams, our pasts, and the paths that had brought us here. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Lauren said softly, glancing at me with a look of understanding. I nodded. "Yeah, so have you, I'm guessing. We all have our stories." She smiled. "True, but I'm glad our stories cross paths. I think we're just getting started." I felt a warmth spread through me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't the intense, all-consuming love I had felt with Jennifer, but something different. A quiet, steady connection built on mutual respect and shared experiences. It felt real, and for the first time in a long time, it felt right. As the weeks turned into months, our business partnership flourished, and so did our relationship. We took things slow, cautious not to rush into anything after everything we had both been through. But there was an undeniable spark between us, a feeling of potential that neither of us could ignore. One crisp winter morning, as we stood on the balcony of our new office overlooking the snow-covered city, I realized how far I had come. The pain of the past had faded, replaced by a future that was bright and full of possibility. I had found success, friendship, and even the beginnings of a new love. "Here's to new beginnings," I said, raising my coffee cup in a toast. Lauren clinked her cup against mine, smiling, and to leaving the past behind. We stood there in comfortable silence, watching as the city came alive with the hustle and bustle of a new day. The sun was rising, casting a golden glow over the skyline. It felt like a symbol of everything I had been through, a reminder that no matter how dark things get, the dawn always comes. I took a deep breath, letting the cold air fill my lungs. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. I had faced my demons, fought my battles, and come out the other side stronger. The future was wide open, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. And as I stood there beside Lauren, watching the sun rise over Boston, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, and I couldn't wait to see where it would lead.